Unfortunate Connection, a Marvel fanfiction written by Hemingwaysgirl on AO3. Peter Parker felt strange. The sensation sweeping over him was uncomfortable and hard to describe. Terror clawed at his chest, impeding his ability to breathe normally. He was dizzy and lightheaded, but the most concerning symptom was the staccato rhythm of his heart. His uneven heart rate was paralleled with medical definition of palpitations, and his above-average knowledge of such terms increased his anxiety about the possible diagnosis. He leaned against the wall of the elevator, sighing as he reached the housing floor of his mentor's workshop. Peter staggered down the inconspicuous hallway in a zombie-like state and his vision blurred. He pressed his palm against the hidden metal door, watching the detached fascination as his fingertips lit up red before fading into a royal blue. The door hissed open, and the symptoms he was experiencing intensified. The teen gripped the wall as he studied the familiar and comforting robotic machines and trinkets adorning the room. The work tables curved sardonically around the rounded pieces of armor and half-finished projects. Tony Stark stood hunched over the sink, breathing heavily. Peter unconsciously zeroed in on the man's heartbeat like he had done so many times previously. He gasped in surprise once he discovered that the rhythm matched his own fluttery pace. His spider senses sent an electric shock down his spine, and the realization hit him at full force, almost knocking him to the floor. His symptoms didn't start until he reached the elevator, and the closer he'd gotten to the basement, the worse he had felt. Tony was in a similar physical distress and had a history of heart problems, while Peter's metahuman status prevented him from randomly having such symptoms. In conclusion, Peter Parker was not ill. He was merely exhibiting symptoms that originated from a central nervous system of Tony Stark. Weird. "Mr. Stark, are you okay?" Tony jumped, whirling around. "Kid, you're early." Actually, I'm late. You don't look so good," Peter replied softly. He began walking towards the billionaire, trying to hide his own distress. "Neither do you, Pete," Tony retorted, his eyebrows furrowing in concern. The teen brushed the observation aside with a desperate shake of his head. "It's not me, it's you." "Wow, flashbacks to my first breakup. Care to explain, kid?" "I think I've developed a new power." Peter paused once he was a few feet across from Tony. "I can sense what you're feeling, physically, I mean. It's so weird. It's like I'm experiencing what's going on with you. The heart palpitations, dizziness, nausea, now headache. It seems to be connected to my spidey sense somehow." "Well, that's fascinating and sort of frightening." Tony studied the teen, his eyes unfocused and guilt-ridden. "I'm actually at a loss. How do I can't... Shit, kid." "Yeah, I know." "So, would it help if I kept my distance, since it's linked to your spidey sense? I know the closer you are to the threat, the more intense the feeling of danger is," Tony said, swiping a hand over his pale and clammy face, unable to hide how much he was shaking. "I hate that I'm the one causing you pain, kid." "It's fine," Peter interjected. "The worst has started to fade, but I need to know what's happening with you. You have arrhythmia, Tony. You could have a heart attack." "Relax, kid. I took some medication before you arrived. It's kicking in. That's why you're feeling better. Check my heart rate. I swear it's slowing down." Peter nodded in acceptance and leaned forward a little bit, his gaze serious and determined. "Now, what's going on?" Tony scowled in defeat, snapping a finger at Dumb E, who obediently retrieved a stool and brought it to him. He patted the claw in thanks, and the bot beat with pride before rolling away. Peter smiled at the puppy-like eagerness the bot displayed. The engineer slumped heavily into his seat. "You may recall that the original arc reactor I created had pallium core, which was necessary to power the electromagnet to keep the sharpener from entering my heart." Peter nodded absent-mindedly, his mind automatically replaying the chilly words Tony had said. "The thing keeping you alive is also killing you," he mumbled absent-mindedly to himself. "But you created a new element to replace it, right? Starcanium?" "Right, Underoos. So you do have the capacity to listen to me, huh?" Tony teased. Peter rolled his eyes and huffed in exasperation. "I always listen to you, Mr. Stark." "Uh-huh. But I don't understand. What does that have to do with now? I mean, the padallium was filtered out." "Yeah. However, it screwed up my immune system and left me susceptible to certain conditions." Tony inhaled a shaky breath. "I have type 1 diabetes, kid, so my pancreas is basically shot. And my insulin pump was damaged during the whole Civil War mess, and I haven't been able to replace it yet. I've been doing injections, but they aren't always as effective." "Boss, they would be just as effective if you would stop ignoring my reminders to eat," Friday snapped. Peter glares. "Tony, do you know how dangerous it is to skip meals? You can cause so much damage to your body, or pass out, or slip into a coma. Tony's left hand trembled, and his right hand caught the opposing arm in a vice-like grip, wincing as he needed the muscle. I know, Pete. It's just, my appetite is like non-existent right now. Believe me, Mr. Stark, I get that. How about we start out with something small, like wheat toast and maybe some fruit? Tony nodded his head, quickly rising to his feet. He stumbled forward, the movement jerky and uncoordinated. He swallowed heavily, his cheeks draining of color. His eyes began to roll upwards and he stumbled. Peter sprinted out to his side to support his weight as his knees gave out. He slowly lowered him to the floor. Boss is hypoglycemic. A glass of orange juice should help normalize his blood sugar. Peter jogged to the lab's fridge, finding several bottles inside. He grabbed one and crouched beside his mentor. The older man managed to maneuver himself into a sitting position, although he looked slightly dazed. Peter supported his neck with a shaky hand and brought juice to his lips. Peter sighed in relief when he accepted the drink and drank cautiously. After a few sips, his eyes brightened and the trembling coursing through his body faded significantly. Thanks, kid, he croaked, smiling sheepishly. Peter slammed his eyes shut against the onslaught of tears. He exhaled a trembling breath and tried to keep his tone normal. Tony, I know you don't think you matter in the grand scheme of things, but you're important to me, and I can't lose you. Promise me you'll start taking care of yourself, please. Tony's good hand rose and cupped Peter's pale cheek. I promise, kid. The teen snapped his eyes open and the calloused thumb wiped a few traitorous tears that escaped. You mean the world to me, kid. Peter's lips parted into a smile and he stood up, offering a hand to the engineer. He accepted it, wrapping a supportive arm around the teen. They slipped into the kitchen, developing a natural rhythm as they started to prepare dinner. It was as if the new father-son dynamic has always existed, and Peter's wacky spidey sense had provided a necessary push to bring it to life. Peter grinned. He'd never felt more grateful for his spider mutation. Without it, he never would have met Tony, and now he couldn't imagine life without him.